I think we'll go ahead and get started. I am so delighted today to welcome Caleb from Volunteer Iowa and Jamie, who's with Heartland AEA. They have been really incredible advocates in reaching out to the Iowa secondary transition learning community to say, hey, you know, is there a way we can share more information about AmeriCorps as a wonderful opportunity for folks to, get engaged with if it aligns with their interests? And so they've helped us develop a great resource, and they graciously volunteered uh, to do this webinar for us. And we just realized this is an incredible option for folks and wanted to share more information with everybody. So I want to just thank Caleb and Jamie and welcome them. And I'm gonna turn it over to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just throw it right back at you. Jamie kind of started this whole thing off by connecting me with Amy and Kirsten, and it's just been a great experience thus far, and definitely a group that we want to, we see a lot of value in connecting AmeriCorps opportunities with. So it's been great, and I'm glad we could get this in this time of year. So I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Caleb Rigdon. I am an AmeriCorps recruitment specialist for Volunteer Iowa, which is the State Commission on Volunteer Service. And Volunteer Iowa is actually part of HHS. So I work for the state in this capacity. Jamie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Great. Thank you. Yep, my name is Jamie Orozco-Nagel, and as was shared, I'm a school social worker with Heartland AEA. But actually, before starting with Heartland this fall, I worked for almost 14 years for Volunteer Iowa supporting AmeriCorps programs. And Caleb and I are both AmeriCorps alums, so served in the program ourselves. And I'm just excited to be here. I think as I started in this role and learned about the secondary transition community and kind of that focus in education, I was really surprised that there wasn't much information out there about AmeriCorps. And I think AmeriCorps is a great option for any student transitioning from high school, but particularly for those with disabilities. So really happy to share this information with this group today.
Yeah, well, with that, just wanted to share the objectives for this presentation, right? I always did better in class or in meetings when someone gives me a little cheat sheet beforehand, so I know when to take notes and ask questions. So hoping to give you all the same obligation there. So first off, right, we want to make sure everyone here has a good understanding of what AmeriCorps is, so we're going to dive into that a little bit. Then, of course, we're going to go over the benefits of AmeriCorps service, or why someone should consider doing it, or why it's a good fit for individuals. And then we want to get into the differences between the major AmeriCorps programs. There's three in particular that pertain to young people coming out of high school. And then, of course, give you all some tools and resources and an opportunity to ask questions at the end if we have any. So with that too, I will say if you have questions as we're going, feel free to pop them in the chat, and Jamie or I will either answer them if it kind of fits in with where we're at, or we'll wait till the end just to get to all the questions. But otherwise, hoping to have some good conversation here at the end of this. So with that, we will just dive right into the good stuff. So AmeriCorps, right? Some of you may be familiar. Odds are one of you probably knows someone who served, even if you don't know that. But basically, AmeriCorps is an agency that provides opportunities for Americans of all ages and backgrounds to give their time and talent to address the major issues of today, right? No matter who you are or what you're passionate about, where you are from, or why you want to serve, AmeriCorps is your chance to bring out the best of America. So that's the nice kind of fluffy pie in the sky definition that sounds great, and it is. It's a really good definition, but Jamie and I were discussing, right? It doesn't really do a great job of explaining what exactly AmeriCorps is. So kind of the nitty gritty, concrete definition is that AmeriCorps is actually a federal agency that provides funding and training to organizations so that those organizations can bring on individuals to serve in that organization to some capacity. Jamie, if you want to add on to that definition, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I would just say that those AmeriCorps members who serve will do service that helps benefit their community while also learning some skills to build their own opportunities for future education or employment.
Yeah, AmeriCorps it's kind of a nice sweet zone between internships and jobs and volunteer service. So we'll get much more into that, but hopefully that gives us a nice framework to work from. So to give you an idea of what AmeriCorps programs are doing right here in Iowa, specifically AmeriCorps programs that Volunteer Iowa helps to funnel that federal money towards, I just wanted to show you all real quickly some of the different areas in which AmeriCorps members serve and what they're doing to better Iowa. So we have organizations that help communities prepare for disaster. We have organizations that help communities and nonprofits build their capacity. So, get bigger and better at what they do and provide opportunities for communities to share their resources with more of their community members. We have a lot of education and youth development programs, which makes sense, right? Because Iowa has pretty established history of helping educate young people. So whether it's providing summer opportunities or helping kids who are behind in reading catch up, or providing STEM education, or helping first-gen students get to college, there's a lot of AmeriCorps members statewide doing education and youth development related work. We also have programs that help provide economic opportunities and economic opportunity resources to underserved populations. So the three you see there, right, they provide housing and legal aid, and then resources to refugees and immigrants. So a lot of good work going on there. And then what a lot of people associate AmeriCorps with is, environmental stewardship. And Iowa is very lucky to have three, among others, three environmental stewardship programs doing some awesome conservation work, managing public land, and doing environmental education work throughout the state. So that just gives you a nice little snapshot of Volunteer Iowa's programs. So between this 19, I think, programs that we have, there are dozens of host sites from each program. And then at those host sites, we have over 400 AmeriCorps members actually statewide doing this service in various capacities.
Yeah, and so Caleb shared some examples, and I'm sure if there's time, he and I would be happy to share our experiences as AmeriCorps members. I just see Monica is on, who's also got AmeriCorps experience. So hi, Monica. So if any others on the webinar have their own AmeriCorps experiences, or those, we'd be happy to have you chime in. But I'll say that, that's just a snapshot in Iowa. There are all kinds of AmeriCorps programs across the country, and AmeriCorps does have a long history of supporting inclusion in its programs. So we just wanted to share a couple of examples. There are actually some national level awards that the AmeriCorps agency gives each year. And the first year they were presented by Tom Harkin from Iowa, and connected to kind of his history of supporting both service and inclusion. So each year those Excellence in AmeriCorps awards highlight some inclusion efforts among AmeriCorps programs or members. So a couple of recent examples I thought to share to just give that idea of what this can look like. There's a winner of James Taylor, who was an AmeriCorps member with the Public Allies AmeriCorps program in Chicago. And James had been a special education student himself, and then he served with the Chicago Public Schools. So I think looking for how his background helped him to make sure they improved their services so that they didn't have students who were getting accommodations getting lost in their system. So a great example of a student with a disability who went on to be an AmeriCorps member. And then more recently, just last year, one of the award winners was the Transition Age Youth Program, so appropriately named for this group, which is a program that works specifically to recruit individuals who have a history in the foster care system to serve as peer mentors to youth who are currently in that system and support them in that transition from foster care to adulthood. Because of that background, they also have a lot of individuals who have had disabilities who are then in service, and they've done a great job being inclusive and having individuals be successful, taking that background and sharing that for others who are coming out of the system. So just a couple of other ways that you can see how AmeriCorps members are doing that community service and doing that in an inclusive way.
Thanks, Jamie. So as promised, hopefully now with a little bit better understanding of AmeriCorps, the big picture, we wanted to break down the 3 programs that really pertain to youth as they're coming out of high school. There's no upper age limit on most AmeriCorps programs, but obviously it's good to know what's available upon leaving high school, especially for this group. I always tell high school age folks that I wish I had someone come tell me this stuff when I was their age, because I would have done it out of high school instead of after college. So really enjoy this opportunity. But that being said, there are 3 different programs with each one providing different experiences. And we think it's important that people have a basic understanding of each program so that they can, try to narrow down which one's going to be the best fit for them. So first off is VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. The short and simple definition of VISTA is that it's the capacity building branch of AmeriCorps for individuals 18 and up. This is the branch of AmeriCorps service where members spend a year serving at one organization, helping to assess community needs, recruit volunteers, find funding, and just general expansion programming. So this is a program someone should consider if they wish to enter the nonprofit industry or just learn more about how nonprofits operate. If they prefer kind of that indoor, behind the scenes work that is really integral to a nonprofit operating, or if they want to serve in one location for their entire term of service. And again, I'll note that VISTA is 1 full year of service, so they'd be in one spot for that entire time. State National is the next program we're talking about here today. So State National is the program for individuals 17 or older to serve an organization by performing hands-on service. The opportunities in State National range from full-time to minimal time, 3 months up to a year. So someone should consider joining State National if they want to serve in a hands-on manner, or if they can't commit to a full year, right? So the big thing I really want to draw your attention to between these 2 programs is that hands-on versus capacity building. Capacity building, right, is very much kind of behind the scenes, and honestly, it's stuff people might not even know happens at a nonprofit. Whereas that hands-on is usually what people associate with that nonprofit. It's the work that nonprofit does out in the community. So a really easy example to draw this difference, the Greater Des Moines Area Habitat for Humanity, they have a VISTA member that recruits and trains their volunteers. And then they have a State National member that actually is out and about helping to build the houses and, swinging a hammer and making measurements and cutting wood and all that stuff. And then finally, we have the National Civilian Community Corps, also known as NCCC. This one is unique in that it's a residential program that puts individuals aged 18 to 26 on teams and sends them around the country for 10 months, doing tough hands-on service for various organizations. So this is a program for an individual who wants a challenge. They want to travel pretty extensively during that 10 months, and they want to work hard in service to others. So it's important to note that each program has benefits, but those benefits are going to vary a little bit between programs, just dependent on the travel costs, the housing, living stipend, professional development, and all these other program or benefits we're going to get into just offer different experiences. So with that being said, we are going to get into the benefits a little bit here. The ones that are of special note for someone leaving high school are members receive money for future school costs. Members earn a living stipend during their term of service. Full-time members are eligible to be covered by health insurance plans. Members who leave or once they successfully complete their service, they gain access to schools of national service benefits. And let's say a member or individual maybe tries school out or does this after school. If they took out federal loans, then they can enter those loans into deferment or forbearance. We won't talk about that quite as much because we're talking about high school students here, but it is something to keep in mind for maybe someone who is coming back from school or from more school with loans. So first off is the big one, the Siegel Education Award. So this is the money for school costs. After successfully completing your term of service, an individual is eligible to receive the Siegel Education Award, which is money that can be used for future school costs at any Title IV school, or to make payments on qualified student loans. Again, if that's the route they go. A Title IV school is just any school that receives federal funding. So that's the majority of institutions nationwide. If you're curious at what this amount is, it is equal to the current Pell Grant. So a quick and easy way to find out the award amount is just to Google, right? 2024 Pell Grant. That amount is at $7,395 as we speak. And it has gone up in small increments the last few years, which is an awesome sign. Individuals have 7 years since the date of receiving it to use the Ed Award. So it's not like someone has to have a plan immediately what they're going to use it for. And there's a lot of different options related to school that it can be used for. So it's nice that there's some breathing room between receiving it and having to use it to make those decisions. And then finally, a nice little benefit of being in Iowa is that using the Education Award does not count as taxable income for state taxes in the state of Iowa. There's only a handful of states where that's the case, so something to keep in mind.
And I'll just chime in. If an individual does do a part-time term of service, they can still earn an education award. It'll just be prorated to kind of that equivalent of what it would be if they serve full-time.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jamie. That's a good point. Okay, so then the living stipend, okay? So a lot of times people say, right, they can't volunteer their time because it's volunteer time, right? They're not getting paid or compensated for it. AmeriCorps tries to address this by offering a living stipend, right? So while you're serving, you do receive a modest living allowance that helps to cover your basic costs of living. That living stipend amount is going to vary by AmeriCorps program, your position within the program, and your service site. So just a quick details on each program. So Vista service living stipends are reflected in the cost of living in the county of which you serve. So a Vista member in Polk County, Iowa is going to probably have a lower living stipend than a Vista member in Cook County, Illinois, Chicago, because the cost of living out there is more expensive. State national living stipend is determined by the host site. So a state national member with Habitat for Humanity is probably going to have a different living stipend than Green Iowa, and that's just because it's up to each host site and their budget on what that living stipend is. And then finally, NCCC, since it's residential and it includes room and board and travel expenses, the living stipend is less since the members do not have to pay out of pocket for those expenses throughout the year. Some more education-related benefits. AmeriCorps alum are able to claim extra financial benefits from schools of national service. This is quite honestly one of the better things about AmeriCorps, in my opinion, and we're finding out that a lot of people don't know about it. So we're really trying to promote it more and make sure people understand this. Schools of National Service is basically a network of colleges all over the country that have agreed to give special financial considerations to AmeriCorps alums. Those considerations are totally up to the school and can be as simple as waiving the application fee, or they can be things all the way up to, matching Ed Awards, in-state tuition status for alums, free credits. There's some pretty extensive opportunities out there. So I always recommend to someone, if you're thinking about going to school after high school, see if your school is a school of national service or the school you're interested in. And if it is, right, that might be an extra incentive to do AmeriCorps service before going to college. The next two are loan related. So like I said earlier, they don't pertain as much to this population necessarily, but know that, if you were to do service, or if an individual were to do service after having taken out some loans, they could either put those loans into forbearance or deferment, and they can also apply to have any interest that accrued on those loans during their term of service be repaid by AmeriCorps. I can get into that if we have questions later on, but otherwise we will move ahead for the sake of time here. Whoop. Forgot to add a transition there. That's what you get doing last second additions. And then finally, kind of the last slide here, benefits, right? Health insurance and this other benefits category. So this is important. I can personally attest to having had a couple of service-related incidences during NCCC. But full-time members qualify for health benefits. VISTA and NCCC members have access to those health benefits through International Medical Group. And you have the option to make it a secondary or primary option. So I was, under 26 during my terms of service. So I was able in both cases to make it the secondary option, in which case they helped cover, upfront costs with some of the stuff that I had to go see doctors for. And then state national, so similar to the living stipend, state national members coverage is going to be according to their specific host site, and it is for full-time members for state national only. And then that last one here is also important to keep in mind, that AmeriCorps members may be eligible for or continue to be eligible for certain public benefits while serving in AmeriCorps. And I think, Jamie, you wanted to say something more to that?
Yeah, I think I'll just note that, the health benefits or insurance offered through AmeriCorps is limited. So those with additional health needs would probably want to look into that further. For certain AmeriCorps programs, though, like for example, one's Medicaid eligibility would not be impacted. We in the handout have a link to a pretty extensive guide about how AmeriCorps interacts with various public benefits, including Medicaid and Social Security programs. I think it's important to know, I know a lot of individuals with disabilities might be getting SSI payments, and those would not be impacted by your AmeriCorps service. And so for a lot of federal programs, the AmeriCorps living allowance does not count as income when someone is considering the eligibility to continue for those. So usually someone can continue to serve or can join AmeriCorps without jeopardizing some of those other programs that might be supporting them.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So everything Jamie and I just went, you could do some digging and find somewhere in an FAQ page or somewhere online. But some of the stuff on this page, it's going to be harder to find because it really comes from members or alumni, sharing about their service experience or experiences. So this stuff's equally as valuable, if not more valuable than some of that. So I wanted to share it with you all. Members and alumni alike will tell you that their service time, let them step away from their normal way of living sometimes and empower them by including them in the solution to a local problem. I think we all can probably look around and see problems that our communities or communities around us face, and sometimes that can be overwhelming, but it's really cool knowing that there's opportunities to be part of the solution, and that goes a long way in making an individual feel like part of that community and part of the solution. Likewise, right, in a similar vein, individuals learn a lot about themselves, and they learn just how much of a difference they can make, which is huge. If you talk to alumni or members, they will tell you that their term of service really helps them discern their career path. A lot of times it's individuals telling you they found something they are excited for, right, or passionate about. Other times people will tell you they found something that they now know for sure they never want to do again. And that's perfectly fine, right? That's just as valuable as finding something you want to do. So either way, service is going to give you an opportunity to learn something about yourself and your career. For those individuals who found something they're passionate about, they will tell you that their term of service helped unlock that pathway. It is not uncommon for someone to serve after being in the workforce for a couple of years. because they need a change, right? They don't like what they went to school for, or they don't like their job, and they just want to do something else, but they don't know how to get those skills other than going back to school. So a lot of people will do service and then start a career in this new kind of sector, and that's, again, there's more people out there that have that path than you may realize. No matter what you end up doing in AmeriCorps or how it relates to what you end up doing afterwards, you're going to find awesome people that you can network with. You're going to have some incredible skills to put on a resume and some pretty unique stories to talk about in an interview or on an application. And then perhaps most importantly, this was definitely the biggest thing I got from my service, is that service is going to introduce you to people who are nothing like you at all. And you're going to learn so much from those people. So I came from a very small town, and it was just very beneficial for me to get out and about and go, travel around the South and learn about people from different walks of life than myself.
Yeah, so Caleb was sharing about some of those less tangible benefits to AmeriCorps, but there actually is some research that the Federal AmeriCorps Agency has done on how volunteering and service can help someone on that career path. So I think especially sometimes parents might ask, be a little skeptical of what you're going to do this AmeriCorps thing instead of just going and getting a job. But actually, some of that research shows that individuals who have volunteering on their resume are more likely to get a job than non-volunteers. And if you look at the infographic, for those of you in rural areas, that benefit was almost double. So it does help you stand out. And then AmeriCorps specifically, there was some research done that showed that college graduates who also had that AmeriCorps National Service experience were more likely to get a job offer than similar individuals who did not have that background. So for folks, again, who might not know what they want to do, that AmeriCorps can be a great way to help point them down that career path. Or if you think they need a little bit more skill building before they're ready for more regular full-time employment, volunteering or AmeriCorps can be a great option.
So yeah, just a little bit here about a lot bit about accommodations. So AmeriCorps has a long history of adjusting service tasks to an individual and creating accommodations so that individuals with disabilities can serve. Ultimately, at the end of the day, right, AmeriCorps is about serving others. And if you have someone who wants to help and has that desire and passion to make their community or another community better, very, very few people in the nonprofit world are going to say, right, we don't want that person. We want people entering in whatever capacity they can come in to help. And AmeriCorps does a great job of ensuring programs are prepared to work with individuals who need extra accommodations in order to do that service. So AmeriCorps is a training program where an AmeriCorps host site is responsible for training that individual in the skills they need in order to succeed. So the vast majority of AmeriCorps programs actually have no education requirement and no skill requirement as far as the skills related to the service. So, individuals that want to learn how to build a house can go serve with Habitat for Humanity and they'll be taught those skills, right? I certainly did not know any of the stuff I learned during my terms of service until afterwards. So it's it's a real minimum requirement position, unlike some of the stuff you often see that says it's minimum requirements. So AmeriCorps is great for that, and it encourages individuals to apply regardless of where they're at, education-wise or skill-wise.
So just a few tips here. AmeriCorps does have some specific policies and procedures related to reasonable accommodations and how those work. So some things to help support students that you may be working with who have an interest when they're looking at that application side of things. They should know that they are entitled to reasonable accommodations during the application process. It's not just after they would start serving in a program. So at that level, it'd be really important for them because there's such a wide range of AmeriCorps programs and positions to really look closely at the positions that are of interest to them and make sure they can figure out what those essential functions are. And if they're not clear on what those are, to be able to ask about that and kind of know their own abilities to help pinpoint what accommodations they might need and be prepared to have that discussion. Then while you are in service, they should know that it is okay if they want some help from a family member or someone, a support person, to request an accommodation. If they're not comfortable doing that themselves yet, they should know if someone else helps them, they'll probably get a follow-up, or they will get a follow-up from their program just to verify that request, and that if it's an accommodation that it may not be obvious to the supervisor that it's something they need, they might have to provide some documentation to back up that request. And then just Caleb has a few examples of some accommodations that AmeriCorps programs in Iowa have provided.
Yeah, so just a couple of examples for what some of Volunteer Iowa's programs have done in the past. Programs have installed physical workplace accommodations, installed software on computers, allocated funds for translators and interpreters, modified schedules for members. I think that's a big one for sure. And then used funds so that program staff could have trainings as well to learn how to best either create documents or have better practices, or just how to work with an individual with specific accommodations.
And then just thinking a little bit about, well, again, while a student is still in school, and thinking of those living, learning, working realms, and how does that relate to what life as an AmeriCorps member looks like, in the area of living. Caleb shared how there is an AmeriCorps program that does provide room and board. So in that setting, though, AmeriCorps members are living as part of a team. So on the living side, someone would need to be comfortable to live in a group setting. And those groups travel around during their service term. So having some flexibility and adaptability to, having a lot of change in your living situation. In the AmeriCorps State and National or AmeriCorps Vista programs, the members are responsible for their own living arrangements. So the individual needs to have those skills to figure that out. That could still be living with family if that works for them. But otherwise, they would need to be able to figure out their own living situation and manage that while they're in service. On the learning side, we shared that, many positions are entry level, and the program is responsible for providing the training to carry out the specific responsibilities of the position. But usually there will be at least some requirements that they'll share about that baseline knowledge, communication skills that might be required, or like physical skills, lifting, standing, things like that. So the individual needs to be able to, again, be able to pick those out. A great thing about AmeriCorps, though, is that there is that orientation. The programs have to provide training to help when the term is ending, to help the individuals prepare for that life after AmeriCorps. So there is some training that's built into the program above and beyond that basic training to do the assigned duties. And then on the area of working, the AmeriCorps members, while they are learning and there's that education part, the bulk of their time is spent doing those service activities. So they are going to develop naturally a lot of those hard and soft skills for future employment by doing that. But I think looking at some survey results of recently exited AmeriCorps members, the vast majority of them said they needed to be able to prioritize tasks, meet deadlines, work independently. So thinking about some of those employability skills or executive functioning skills in the area of work and supporting individuals in that area. And then also we talked about how there's full-time or part-time. So making sure that the person knows what does that expected service schedule look like, and is that something that they can commit to?
Yeah, so just a few questions that I think are always good to kind of start with when looking for a fit. Obviously there's questions that an individual needs to ask themselves, and then there's questions that can be asked to the program. And a program is going to love to have these open conversations with anyone interested in serving with them. So I always encourage, those conversations to happen between an applicant and the program. But of course, the first thing you can do, or an individual can do, is ask themselves, right, what are they passionate about? What do they want to do? We've talked about how AmeriCorps programs exist all over and do a whole lot of different kinds of things. So odds are there's something out there for an individual based off of their specific interests or their passions. Additionally, right, if they're good at something and they know it and they want to continue to do that, but in a way that helps others, yeah, let's find something that allows them to do that. Or on the other side of that, right, if there's something they want to get better at or learn, there's opportunities to do that. As we've both said, AmeriCorps is going to train individuals and give them opportunities to learn those hard and soft skills. And really, it comes down to what someone wants to do during their term of service and what they want out of it, and they will find opportunities to give them that. Then, as just as important as what you ask yourself to figure out where to go, are the questions that you're going to ask a program you're interested in. So let's say you're surfing and you see a program that looks interesting to you. Well, now it's important to again contact with them and see, if it's a good fit. Because just like us, when we look for jobs, we want to make sure that individuals serving are going to a place that's going to be a good place for them. So an easy thing to ask right off the bat of a program is ask them how they support their members, right? AmeriCorps service can be difficult at times, and it's important that this organization can state, how they go about supporting members when those members need extra support. Additionally, specifically for this group, something we can always ask is, has this program implemented accessibility accommodations before in the past? Sometimes, right, it might be an organization that hasn't done that, or maybe they've done it, but the staff member in charge of that is gone now. So that's important, right, to figure out if this place is going to have a learning curve on their end, or if they're going to be ready to go hit the ground running right away. And then finally, and this is true of anyone, right, is ask this program, how is this program going to help me or the applicant build skills to use after they serve? It's important that we understand AmeriCorps can really launch people into that life after AmeriCorps where they're doing something of value, both for themselves and for the community. So it's good to ask what this program does to really set an individual up for that. And then, of course, the very basic things to consider, which we've discussed a little bit with each program, the age of applicants, right? Some people might age out before they're able to decide, depending on the program. Location of the service site, as we've said, there's programs all over Iowa. So if someone wants to serve in their community, there's potential for that. Or if they want to serve in the community next door, or the state next door, or the time zone next door, right? It's just figuring out who wants to go where and to what degree. And then, of course, the length of service. So a 1 year of service can be a long time. So maybe we find a 3-month term or a 6-month term, right? There's options in those different categories as well. And that's going to narrow down where you're going to go quite a bit. Again, the number one thing that anyone can do is find a program and then find that contact person for that program and just have a conversation, right? Ask them what skills they're looking for, be open about your skills, talk about any potential barriers to service, and then that accommodation process with this specific program.
And Caleb, I'll maybe just chime in here. We had a question in the chat about what factors might preclude an individual from serving in AmeriCorps. So I think maybe I'll just start by covering kind of those basic eligibility requirements and then get into some of those specific questions. So in addition to that, the age requirements that we mentioned, individuals do need to be U.S. citizens, nationals, legal permanent residents, or usually have some other legal citizenship status in the United States to serve. That is something basic. you do have to consent to undergo a criminal history records check. And those are, and either have a high school diploma or agree to work towards a high school diploma. If you have not earned one yet, usually in order to access that education award on the back end, you have to have earned a high school diploma or equivalent. But there's a lot of support that can be given to individuals in that case. Some specific questions were asked about like cognitive ability, mental illness, behavior, criminal record. So on the criminal record side, the only including factors on kind of the national level are being listed on the sex offender registry or having that kind of a criminal history that would require you to be registered on the sex offender registry. Other than that, each program would set its own criminal history requirements. So, you know, if it's a program where you're serving vulnerable positions, like you're working more directly with children, those programs are probably going to have some other exclusionary factors in terms of your criminal history compared to a program where you're building trails out in a state park with a group of others, you know, under supervision of a state park employee. So the criminal history really depends on that specific position and what the program decides is an appropriate background related to that. In terms of mental illness, I know a lot of Iowa AmeriCorps programs have a member assistance program now, similar to like an employee assistance program, to provide some additional mental health resources for members that they can access. And like the modified service schedule is something I've seen programs do a lot to help support those with mental health programs where they might sometimes need time off to do that, to have appointments or maybe a reduced service schedule. In terms of behavioral concerns, I think that one might be a little bit harder because there's community service. And so managing the appropriate behavior is something that most positions will need someone to be able to do in order to do their service activity. And then some baseline cognitive abilities I would see would be something that most programs are looking for someone who can do at least some of this basic service. There's a few programs nationally that have been designed particularly to help those or engage those with intellectual disabilities, but we don't have any Iowa programs that are specifically targeting that population. But that was a great question to kind of go through that. I don't know, Caleb, if there's anything you would add.
I'll throw in quickly for my NCCC term. So NCCC it's a class, or we call it a class, where, you know, we had 300 people in my class, all in Vicksburg, Mississippi at once, and then we got sent all over the country. So out of that 300 people, there were people from each of those groups listed serving, and all served the entire year successfully. So, you know, different levels of cognitive ability, mental illness, mental health, behavioral concerns. There were some people that had, you know, minimal criminal record stuff. So yeah, again, it's dependent on the program. NCCC is one of those specifically where it's about, you know, getting in, and then if you can work with people and you have a willingness to do it, they make accommodations for a lot of individuals. So that's just my personal experience with it. So it was kind of, when I said earlier about meeting people from different walks of life and with different backgrounds, right? That's actually kind of what I was referring to, is people with just vastly different upbringings than me and different experiences in life that were there for, you know, the same reason I was. It was really cool. So yeah, that's my only thing I'll add to it. Yeah, so up on the screen here, so the resource that we've talked about a little bit, that Amy has, this is the stuff you'll be able to find on it. So please get once you get eyes on it, feel free to ask questions, you know, whether or in the future. So first, there is a side-by-side comparison of the benefits for each program. That's just nice to have it all in kind of one place and be able to compare side by side. And then there's that document Jamie mentioned about AmeriCorps benefits, interacting with public benefits. That is a very inclusive document. So be sure to check that out if you have questions on it. And then you have the AmeriCorps Fit Finder, which is a national agency tool just to kind of help narrow down which program might be a good fit for an individual. You have Volunteer Iowa's, our AmeriCorps program directory, which just gives some more detail on those programs I had listed earlier in the webinar. There's My AmeriCorps, which is the AmeriCorps nationwide position search tool, which is also where you apply for most AmeriCorps positions. So if an individual is interested, they can both search for positions there and apply for positions there. And then there's also more information on the Ed Award, living stipend, and the other benefits. And then not included on it are AmeriCorps' social media accounts, but they're pretty easy to find. But the links are here, which you will all have access to this PowerPoint as well afterwards. So feel free to give any of those a follow. And AmeriCorps does some pretty awesome content as far as member spotlights, program spotlights, and just cool things like that. So we will open it up for any other questions people have. If you don't have questions now, you can always reach out to me at Volunteer Iowa there, either the Caleb Rigdon email or the AmeriCorps at Volunteer Iowa email will get to me as well. You can call me at either of those numbers during the day, and I'll do my best to pick up. That third link there is the quarterly recruitment newsletter I send out, which basically just highlights AmeriCorps in Iowa. So it's our programs, who's in recruitment, what they do, things like that. And then the AmeriCorps FAQ and the AmeriCorps hotline are, again, national, AmeriCorps national websites, resources that if you have like a very specific AmeriCorps question, you could call the hotline or go through their extensive FAQ page and see if it's already been asked and answered. But yeah, now would be an awesome time for us to have some conversation, hopefully, and get any of your questions answered.
And thanks, Amy, for putting the link in the chat to that resource page.
So Dina is asking about receiving the presentation with access to the links. We will share that with everybody. We'll also post it along with the recording and the resource document that Caleb just talked about. All of those will be available on the Iowa Secondary Transition Learning Community website. Plus, I'll send that out to our email list. So yes, we'll make sure that you get that. And then Ashley has some questions. How do you partner with high schools to get the information out about AmeriCorps? And do you go to job fairs involved with IJAG programs, etc.?
Yeah, Ashley, thank you for asking. So yeah, that's my role at Volunteer Iowa is pretty new. I'm just someone specifically around recruitment for AmeriCorps. So that's been one of the first things I did was circle some organizations that would be great partners, and IJAG was at the top of the list, especially given how much support they receive at the state, just statewide. So yeah, actually in the last 3 weeks, I've been at 4 different schools for IJAG presentations, and that came about because I was at the IJAG career fair last month with HHS and some IJAG teachers, supervisors, I forget what they call themselves, but they came up to me and asked me to come present at their school. So yeah, that's been a great partnership. We also have a youth service staff member at Volunteer Iowa who, her whole goal is to get, youth, under high school age more involved in volunteering and community service. So I've been working with her to get in with, key clubs, 4-H. We have a 4-H program, so that helps as well. Lions clubs, Rotary, those types of places, as well as silver cord coordinators, principals, anyone who has the attention of high schoolers and younger, because there's really they can't serve till they're 17 or 18, but the sooner we can, let them know about it as an option, hopefully the more likely they will serve. So that's kind of the extent. Sometimes it is kind of wait for a high school to reach out to us, just because, it can be difficult to get a hold of people, but otherwise, that's kind of the extent of high schools. Yeah.
And I'll just chime in. I mean, Volunteer Iowa is a state agency, but it's a teeny tiny state agency. So I think any help, we've got folks from schools, AEAs, from Voc Rehab, any help you can provide to get the word out to your communities is something that is really appreciated because it's a small team. So I know when I was at Volunteer Iowa, in terms of us physically getting out and about, there's just not very many of us. So having others who can be ambassadors for AmeriCorps to your networks is greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, my role was to do that out and about stuff. But yes, any help with that is awesome and appreciated. So yes, contact me if you want to help out with that.
Wanted to make a couple comments. I've had some great experience with AmeriCorps over the last several years. Got an opportunity to do a lot of work that was focused on specifically recruitment and engagement of individuals with disabilities in service. Have also been involved with programs that were AmeriCorps programs. And I just really want to encourage folks. I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can partner and consider AmeriCorps. So absolutely, I think one of the very best is the opportunity for people to be members and to be engaged. And there's so many folks, regardless of disability, but there are so many folks who just maybe aren't quite sure what their path is, either right out of high school or even after college. Still not sure. So it really does, I think, provide an amazing opportunity that is still kind of safe, in the sense that you have this great community, very supportive community, and a way to continue to develop those skill sets. And the other thing is, are there programs that you might have some individuals who benefit from accessing those programs and services potentially? And then the last area I think of is a number of the folks that are involved in today's session. They might benefit from wanting to develop an AmeriCorps program to support the work they're doing or meet a need that's not being met right now in their community. So that's always an option too. You don't have to be huge. I've worked with programs that might just have one member doing work with them, but I've found AmeriCorps to be very interested and very open in really wanting to support diverse members and doing what they can do to make that work for folks. So I just really want to encourage folks, if you haven't, to continue to learn about it, to reach out to Caleb, to look into some of the resources that they've shared, because it is really an amazing opportunity. Do folks have any other questions or comments that they might want to share?
This is Monica Brackway. Thank you so much for putting this together. I think there's a lot of opportunity to partner with AmeriCorps, and I think it's kind of an underutilized experience, especially for our transition population and just as a skill building vehicle. So thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Good to see you, Monica. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all as well for hopping on and taking some time here on this beautiful Friday when you could be outside doing something much, much nicer. But yeah, always feel free to contact me. It's not just me on the AmeriCorps team at Volunteer Iowa. We have a lot of very knowledgeable service veterans, if you will, AmeriCorps veterans who do the work now of programming and everything. So between one of us, we'll have any answer you might need to AmeriCorps. But yeah, thank you all again for being here, and looking forward to hearing from you at some point.
Thank you so much, Caleb and Jamie. I greatly appreciate all your time and support in this. It's a wonderful thing. And Really, really appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.